Slowhands Rock Talk Show.
No problem. You got it.
Okay, but Ricky, thank you so much for being the first guest on season 4 of the podcast. I'm glad you've made a little bit of time out of your afternoon across the water in LA to come on and speak to myself about all things music. But before we get started, though, one question that lots of people forget to ask: how are you actually doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. I just had COVID for about the 5th time, but I think that's part of the course with a lot of people now. I'm just getting over that. When you travel a lot, and obviously, when you're a musician, you touring musician, you travel probably more than the average person. You're just putting yourself at risk, and picked it up. But I'm a fully vaxxed person, so it wasn't too bad, and it went away. So I'm feeling pretty good. Long story short, yes, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, as Freddie Mercury said, the show must go on.
Well, that's it. You just deal with it.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about all things music for yourself, bands, songs, all that sort of good stuff, and everything that fits in between. But what I like to do with all the guests is go back to the very beginning. So where originally are you from?
So I was born in a town called Newtownards, which is about 8 miles east of Belfast. It's in County Down in Northern Ireland. And I was born there and lived there till I was about 14. And then I moved to Straven in Scotland.
Yeah, so look, that's...
Attended Straven Academy for 1 year. And that's where I met Stumpy and Floyd.
Yeah, and that's just sort of out East Kilbride way.
Yeah, Straven's about 7 miles sort of west of East Kilbride, heading sort of towards Ayrshire direction, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Falkirk direction, so right. I'm probably about maybe 50 minutes from there.
Yeah, yep, sure.
Not too far, but see, when you were younger, growing up, were you exposed to music from a young age? And if so, where did that come from? Was that your parents or siblings?
My mum was the musical one. My mum was... I could play piano and great harmonica player as well, and a great singer.
Right.
She was in choirs and stuff like that, but they never really pushed me into it at all. I was more infatuated with football, as a lot of kids were. Boys my age and growing up in the 70s. I have 2 older sisters, so they were bringing home the albums that I was really getting to hear for the first time, and then obviously Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
The radio back then, Radio Luxembourg at night, sneaking the radio in. I mean, those were the old days, and obviously you just didn't have the variation that you have now of being able to access music. It was very limited to what you could get. Yeah. So we were very grateful for anything that we get, and I just devoured it. I just loved it. I mean, just from the minute I can remember, I was fascinated with Top of the Pops from 5-6 years old,
It's one of those things that I discuss on the channel because... This episode is sponsored by Flare Audio, who are kind enough to send me some of their products out. And for someone that's a regular gigging musician, someone that works recording music, and also someone that's a regular concert goer, they did have a product for all my needs. The first product they sent me was the Definition earplug, which helps to increase sound quality without increasing the sound volume. Excellent to use when gaming, when attending live concerts, and been listening to music in general. The second product they sent me was the Camera Performance earplug, which was a great earplug to use when working from home or in the office, when you need to maybe focus a little bit better and keep those stress levels down. The third product they sent us was the Earshade earplugs, which as a regular gigging musician, these were very helpful when actually playing gigs, standing close to a PA system. Found them very useful, and by the end of the night my ears were still in good shape. The final product they sent us was the E-Prototype headphones. For someone that records and mixes music, I always like to do the headphone test towards the end of the mix, and these are the headphones to use. The dynamics sound great, blocks out background noise, and it's crystal clear to hear as well. So check out Flare Audio at their official website, www.flareaudio.com. They're also on social media. They've got lots of different products and accessories, so check them out. And now on to the video. I was born in the very start of the 80s. So grew up in the 80s, teenager throughout the 90s. I was still of the generation where you had to go to the music shop and buy an album. to listen to.
Sure.
Or you would maybe, get a copy of your friends' albums or that. But because music wasn't unlimited access from the comfort of your pocket with your phone, you studied the music that you did have. You maybe only had 10 or 12 albums, but you knew those albums inside out, start to finish. Whereas nowadays, I think the attention span is probably zero. And people maybe...
we grew up in a golden age, there's no doubt about it. And things were a lot different. I'm not having a go at the way things are today. The world changes and that's just the way that it is. But, like you rightly said, albums were a thing, the artwork, the sleeve notes, everything, the physical aspect of getting on a bus, going into town and going into a record shop to buy an album, sometimes based on the one track you've heard and taking that risk, not knowing what the other 9 tracks on the record are going to be like. And that was part of the excitement of it. And then meeting your buddies in the record store, buying the albums, and maybe going to the cafe. I'm speaking from, my own personal experiences, going to the cafe afterwards and taking the albums out and, swapping sleeve notes. And it was all kind of mystical and wonderful. And yeah, of course, that's been lost. It has been lost. And sadly, that's just it is.
It's a double-edged sword, though, because the beauty of the internet is that you can discover music from across the world that previously you would never have ever had access to.
Of course. Like everything else, it's got its pros and cons. The internet's great for a lot of stuff. It's horrendous for a lot of stuff as well, but it can be very handy.
So what age, a lot of people maybe get initially inspired by what their parents are listening to, but what age did you discover your own musical taste, and was there any particular bands that you discovered for yourself that was something different from maybe what your parents were listening to?
My parents listened to a lot of country music, so that was always quite relevant in the house at that time. Even though I didn't really understand it or maybe even like it, I really appreciate it now, because all those sort of Johnny Cash and Jim Reeves and Patsy Cline stuff I love now, but at that time, no, I wasn't until I was about 13 and punk, but it was the tail end of punk, so it was 79, 80. So you're starting to get that second wave, but it was bands like, Stiff Little Fingers were the first band I ever saw live. Bands like the Ruts and the Damned, Stiff Little Fingers, the Clash. But then Lizzy as well. I remember my sisters bringing home Thin Lizzy records and instantly falling in love with Black Rose and just thinking it was the greatest thing I'd ever heard. So those were the first things I was really getting into. But even going back before then, the glam rock stuff on Top of the Pops, like Slade, Sweet, T-Rex, all that stuff I loved, Yeah. I still do.
Cast your mind back then. Do you remember, what was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
Good question. Probably, I know the first album was ever bought for me that I probably had was Inflammable Material by Stiff Little Fingers that my sister bought for me for my birthday. I think it might have been Sham 69, Hersham Boys was the first album I ever bought with my own money.
And what was your first ever professional concert that you ever attended?
Stiff Little Fingers, Nobody's Hero Tour, 1980, Ulster Hall.
Yeah.
Changed my life.
That's cool. I've got a friend...
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now if I didn't go to that gig.
Yeah. I've got a friend that he just absolutely loves that band. He still goes to see them every time they roll through Glasgow.
Well, did he go and see them last month when I was opening for them?
I'll need to ask him.
Yeah, we played the Barrows on St Patrick's Day last month, opening for Stiff Little Fingers.
I think he did.
Yeah.
But he's pals with one of the guitarists. I don't know who it is, but obviously yourself, you play guitar, you sing. Which one came first for you? Was it playing the guitar?
Yes, I was playing the guitar, but sort of straight away after I learned a few chords, I was never interested in being a guitar hero. I wanted to write songs. So once I got 3 or 4 chords down, I started coming up with my own ideas, my own songs right from the get-go. But I didn't want to be a singer. I would have been quite happy just to write songs and be the rhythm guitar player. I always loved rhythm guys. I was always interested in the Malcolm Youngs and the Steve Jones of the Pistols and guys like that. I really gravitated. And Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers are fantastic. He's a great lead player, but he's a fantastic rhythm player as well. So I gravitated towards those guys. For me, I had no interest in all in being a frontman or being a lead singer when I first started playing guitar.
And was it one of those setups that the band needed a singer, you were brave enough to step in front of
It's the old cliche, you know, it was one of those things, you know, it was me Stumpy and Floyd from the Almighty, the first band we put together at school in Straven, you know, it was like, well, we need to get a singer. And I just said, well, I'll just do it till we find somebody. Yeah. And here I am, you know, 40 odd years later, and we still haven't found anybody else. So I'm still doing it. I'm
going to do a wee history lesson for you here now. I done the same thing with Michael from Therapy, and it gave me a good laugh. So I'm going to do the same for yourself, because bands starting out always fascinates me, especially when you've been in the game this long, right?
Yeah.
So the Almighty forms January 1988 or thereabouts, right?
Yep.
Signed to Polydor March 1989.
Yep.
Your first album, Blood, Fire and Love, comes out. It's released October 1989.
Yep.
You tour throughout the 1990. You record your second album. Second album comes out, Soul Destruction, released March 1991.
Yep.
You do a UK tour in 1991 supporting Megadeth, right? Mm-hmm. Also do a headline tour of your own in 1991. You do a European tour supporting Alice Cooper. You do an Australian tour supporting Screaming Jets in 92, right? You play Donington 1992, Iron Maiden are headlining it. You record your third album, Power Tripping's released April 93. European tour supporting Iron Maiden in 1993. You play the Milton Keynes Festival at Metallica headline in 1993. You go on your first tour of America in 93. You record your fourth album. Fourth album comes out, Crank, released October 1994. European tour 1994 supporting Pantera, who I love. European headline tour 1995. You record your fifth album. Fifth album, Just Add Life, is released March 1996 before the band takes a bit of a break, right? That is a really busy first 8 years.
You're making me you're just saying that, I'm going, God, I'm knackered just listening to you say that.
Right, but it fascinates me because that's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff you've done that I've not mentioned, right? But that's the first 8 years of a band, and similar with Michael with Therapy. You know, at that point in your career, you know, you're not really tied down to anything. You're young enough that you're going for it. You know, 5 studio albums, 1 live album, 4 headlining tours, 5 tours supporting some big acts. Mm. When you think back to that time period when you're first starting out, does it seem like yesterday? Does it seem like a lifetime ago? What do you think when you think back to that?
I mean, yes and no. You know, sometimes it seems like it was only, like you said, yesterday, but, you know, then you get days where you go, God, that was, you know, over 30 years ago. I mean, amazing times. A whirlwind sort of 8 years, you know, from 88 to 96. It was non-stop, and we never stopped. And I think that's why we burned out.
I was going to say, was that, I mean, without actually knowing any of the reasons or even looking into it, it would seem obvious that the band.
Well, yeah, you add that Burnout. You add into a band that liked to drink and liked to party and do other stuff as well. And growing up, you know, we're all 2021 when we signed to Polydor. You know, we're hitting, by the time the band's about to break up, we're close to 30.
Yeah.
So we spent all our 20s living in each other's pockets. And I think we were just sick of the sight of each other. I really do. Much as we love each other, I think we were just busted. And I think that it was burnout. And I think there'd been some internal problems. There'd been some management problems. There'd been some record company problems. It was just part of the business, you know. And you're living in that goldfish bowl as well. In your 20s, you're not keeping an eye on the money because you don't care. You just want to play. You want to have a drink. You want to tour the world. That's what we were doing. And you don't worry about anything else because you think it'll just take care of itself. Guess what? It doesn't. So you sort of suddenly get to 28, 29, 30 and go, hang on a minute, you know, where's so-and-so and why don't we get paid? So that starts coming into it, you know, you're just starting to get older. You know, people are starting to settle down, get married, you know, kids are coming into the equation. So life's changing. And I think you have to factor all that into it. I think we just got to the point where we just needed a break from each other, you know, and my head was certainly done in, you know, towards the end of it. I just was like, I was just exhausted, you know. I just was I just needed a break. I wanted to step away from it. In hindsight, which is always a great thing, we know we should have probably just said, right, lads, let's take a break here for 18 months, 2 years, and then we'll regroup. But at that point, I was like, no, I'm done. I need to walk away from this. Because I'm quite pig-headed sometimes that way, and I just was like, no, I'm done. That's it. It's over, and I walked away. Looking back at it, that was probably the wrong thing to do. Britpop was happening, which was killing a lot of the hard rock stuff that was going on at the end of the 90s and stuff as well. And a lot of bands were suffering because of that. Obviously, that came and went, and I think if we'd probably regrouped, 2 years later and carried on, I think the Almighty, who knows? But I think the Almighty would probably just, kept going. But
again, looking back, though, what a great time to be a band. In a band.
Oh, it was an amazing 8 years, Ian. It really was.
Yeah, and a great time to be a band at that point in time, because I'm guessing you could make a career out of it. You see a lot of bands now struggling because the music business is definitely not what it was all them years ago, and bands have to tour, I'm guessing, to make money rather than getting anything from album sales or that. It's a shame.
Listen, even touring's not guaranteed income anymore because there's so many subsidies, and then obviously we've got Brexit to thank now for completely, wrecking how we can tour Europe and stuff like that. And you get venues wanting to take, a commission now in merch. It's very, very difficult. I don't envy any young band starting today. I mean, it was hard enough back in the day with us just trying to get out there and get a record deal. But at least if you get a decent record deal, you had some security, in the way of advances from your record label to support you and get you up and running. And you were given a chance to develop. It wasn't just one album or one song. You usually had 2 or 3 albums to find your feet. And, we're proof of that. Power Tripping was, was probably Power Tripping and Crank were our biggest selling albums, and they were our 3rd and 4th albums. So there you go. You don't have that luxury these days, I don't think. And it's so tough. I mean, it's tough for established guys like myself, but I mean, I hate to think what it's like for kids just starting off. I mean, I really feel for them. I really do. I mean, it's not enough to, back in my day, you could do your demos, get a record deal. If it was a decent record deal, you could quit your job and focus on it full time, which is what we did. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to do that these days because the record companies don't want to pay advances. The advances aren't what they are. Royalties aren't what they are. It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah. But going back to music then, so thinking about music for yourself then, I mean, you've played in various bands, wrote a million songs. Do you have a songwriting process? And if so, how does a song normally come around for yourself?
I mean, my songwriting process is this here. This is it. In this very spot, in this room that I'm in right now, it's very simple and hasn't really changed that much over the years. Instead of recording it into a cassette player, I just record it into this now, my iPhone. And it's as simple as that. I don't mess around with, Pro Tools or stuff like that. I refine it on the acoustic guitar until the melody and everything makes sense. And that's progressed over the years. With the Almighty, very much back in the day, it was very much everything was based around the riff. So you write a really heavy guitar riff and then build a song from that. Yep. With the solo stuff and every sort of Black Star Rider stuff and stuff I've done since then, it's very much melody based. So, we'll work. Saying that, still a lot of great riffs going on there, but a lot of the time it starts off in the acoustic guitar, and I tend to write everything on the acoustic guitar and then adapt it from that. But I treat it as a job, Ian, and it is a job, so I try and do something every day if I can. It's not like, well, I got to get in the zone, I got to do that. I mean, I don't buy into that bullshit. I think you're blessed to be able to do this, so give it the respect it deserves. I get up, I come into this room, once I get emails and shit out the way in the morning, and I'll sit down with a guitar and I'll try and work on some songs and come up with something and try and put in a good 5 or 6 solid hours of doing that. If I'm not on the road. And that works for me. So I've always got songs on the go. I'm never really stuck for songs, which is great,
Do lyrics come last for yourself?
No. I mean, it's no. They can come first. Sometimes you can get a great title first, or you can even, a lot of it's just, again, it's poetry. It's a diary for me. It's writing down my thoughts and then going back through them and going, well, I can maybe make this into a song, or that's a great verse there, or something like that. So it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's the lyrics, sometimes it's the melody, sometimes it's the riff. Sometimes it's just something that somebody said to me. It's just anything at all.
And what about so if you were to take the lyrics aside, no music, just read the lyrics, are you quite obvious with what the song is about? Would it make sense?
Well, I think so. I think people know my stuff, that I'm a storyteller, and I like the lyrics. To me, all my lyrics mean something. They're all about something, or they're all written from my own experiences, or experiences that happen to my friends or family, or my thoughts on opinions on something. Like I said, just like a diary. And that's what it is. So they're very important to me, and I refine them quite a lot. I mean, I also want them to flow really well. I want them to be, because I get it. Some people, and I'm the same, that they're out there that will, don't care what the lyrics are. They just want a good melody and a good hook in the chorus. And that's fine. But then there's a lot of people that want to scrutinize it, and want to every word. And what does that mean? What's he trying to say there? So I think you've got to have one foot in either camp there, and
I mean, the great thing about music, there is no right or wrong, but I mean, I like lyrics. I think they're important. Yeah. But if you look at like a radio friendly pop group, they could be singing pretty much anything, because it's not really about the lyrics. It's about the tune that they're making. They want people to get up and dance.
You can have a pretty heavy song. I mean, there's a lot of great examples. I mean, Rock the Casa by The Clash is quite a political song, but it's also a great pop song, and being able to do that. I mean, Phil from Lizzy was brilliant at doing that kind of stuff as well, taking quite a heavy subject and turning it into like a really good pop song. And I think that's it. I mean, like, what you really are, and I think Sting said this, and I agree with him on this, is you're writing nursery rhymes. You're writing that's what they are. They're just, they're earworms, that stick in people's heads. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want. If somebody can come away hearing a tune you've written for the first time and humming a riff, or humming a chorus, or a line in that tune, then I think you're definitely something,
And what about, see, when it comes to recording, do you have a preferred way of recording? Do you record the drums first and layer everything on top? Do you like to do it live? Does it depend which band you're playing with?
No, I mostly like to do it live. I mean, it hasn't really changed much over the years for me in that, get into the studio, and a proper studio, and, like I said, build a rhythm track, bass and drums, and then we'll layer guitars, and then do vocals. And that's not changed. I mean, that's what I'm comfortable doing. Obviously there's a lot more technology there to cut corners, and we do use it. Of course, we use Pro Tools and stuff like that, but organically, it's still very much human beings that are making those noises and putting down those beats.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and obviously you played in various bands across the years. I had a wee look on the Wikipedia page, and I'm like scrolling. I'm like, I didn't realise you'd actually played in that many different bands. I was like, wow, what a career. But here's a question for you. What makes a band, in your opinion, work? And I don't mean in terms of success, but in terms of... Just a very quick message to say thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos, like and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the episode and give me some suggestions on who I should interview in the future. Back to the video. Does a band need to have a leader? Not a dictator. Does it need to have a leader steering the ship?
Yeah, definitely does. I think it has to have, to me, you have to have a great front man, because that's your focal point right there. That's what people home in on. You've got to have a good front man, and you have to have a great drummer. And I think if you do those two things, then you're off. The drummer's everything, and to be blessed as I am to be in the bands with the drummers that I've been in, they're all fantastic. And I've played with them, the best. Yeah. It makes such a difference. It just makes such a difference, because the feel and the vibe that they can give a band is just huge, But I think you need to have a really strong front man, and something that people can visualize on as well.
And was that something?
He's got. the guy that's selling it at the end of the day, you know?
Was that something that you developed over time, or were you quite comfortable in that role from the beginning?
No, I mean, like I was a kid. I was a poser. I was standing in front of the mirror, and no, I mean, I always laugh. I remember writing "Wild and Wonder" for the Almighty. I remember writing it, standing in front of my mirror, throwing shakes, and just writing the song. And so I always liked the showman. I always liked the guys that put on a show on stage. You know, that were edgy and had aggression, like Jake Burns, like Steve Jones, like Phil Lynott, like Lemmy, like all those cats that were just, you know, bringing it. And I just loved that. But the first band I was ever properly in was New Model Army. And I learned a lot from watching Justin Sullivan, their singer, whose stagecraft is just amazing. And I was just like a sponge. I was just watching him and soaking it up and just, you know, in awe of him and just trying to learn from him. And you know, again, just watching how Phil was on stage with Lizzy was amazing. You know, watching them. Just my heroes growing up and just trying to soak it in and try and hopefully some of it, you know, goes into your own DNA, you know?
I was going to say, what's the difference between Ricky that I'm speaking to just now and Ricky that's up on stage? Because I was watching an interview, and it wasn't too long ago with James Hetfield from Metallica, right? And you see him, he walks on, for the last 40 years, he's walked on stage, he commands the stage, he commands the crowd.
Yeah.
Being off stage, I'm actually pretty shy, quite quiet.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably fall in that category as well. I mean, I think similar traits with James, that I'm quite reserved and quite laid back. And I am quite shy. And I think sometimes people find that a bit weird, you know, but I am. I don't take compliments well, and I've got that, you know, it's that, you know, fucking Northern Irish, west of Scotland, you know, reserve thing. Keep your feet on the ground, you know. I don't get too carried away, but when I'm on that stage, that's my domain, and I just switch. You know, my wife laughs because she just, my middle name's Desmond, so my wife calls me when I go on stage. She says I turn into Demented Des. She says, this is the alter ego character that you go on stage. Oh, and she's right, but it's still real. It's a part of me that I'm able to keep for that moment when I hit that stage and get in that zone. And that's everything for that, you know, hour and 45 minutes that I'm up there or whatever it is. I just have to give it all. I'm focused, and, you know, nothing's going to fucking stop me. Nothing's going to get in my way. But that's where the ego comes out. Yeah. The minute I walk off that stage, the ego goes away. You know, I'm just back to being, I'm Ricky, you know, and I've always been quite good. Maybe when I was younger, I was a bit more arrogant, and sometimes the ego thing and Demented Des would come with me, and I wouldn't leave him on the stage. Sometimes he'd hang about for a while, but now he very much stays on the stage. You know what I mean?
Here's a question for you. So, like yourself, right, I've got guitars sitting around here that are, start to show my age now, they're 30 plus years old, right? Yeah. Now, I've took care of them. You know, give them a wee clean now and again. You restring them. They can sound as good as the day you picked them off the guitar shelf. Yeah. Not better. Your voice, though, is also an instrument, right? Now, yeah. Your voice will naturally, you can look after it, but it will naturally change over time with age. How do you feel your singing voice is now compared to, for example, 25 years ago?
Night and day. I'm a 100% better singer now than I was 30 years ago.
Are you singing differently now, or are you more comfortable?
Yeah, well, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, the Almighty was very much, it has to be aggressive, so I'm going to just shout the melody. And that worked, and that was fine. But when I went into doing my first solo record, Tattoos and Alibis, with Joe Elliott, he pulled me aside and he went, you can fucking sing. Just sing. You don't have to yell everything. You know, you don't have to yell to get your point across. And he really coached me, you know, and so you're learning from one of the greats there, because, you know, Joe's a fabulous singer. And he really taught me how to control the anger and the attitude and sing and be confident in your own voice. So that, you know, if you listen to how I am in that first solo record, it's completely different to anything I ever did from the Almighty, because I'm actually singing on it. And then I I got more confident. I progressed. Then when I, got the gig in Lizzy, that was huge because obviously I'm singing Phil's songs.
Yeah.
So suddenly I'm having to pay very much attention to how Phil was doing his delivery and all that kind of stuff. And I learned so much doing that, and it game changer for me. So that was a game changer. Just now I'm very confident. I know what my limitations are. I've got a baritone voice. I know how high I can go. I know how low I can go. I know what I can do. So I work on those limitations. Plus, I quit drinking 3.5 years ago, and I used to get hoarse quite. And since I've quit drinking, my voice is 10 times stronger.
Yeah. The other thing being, obviously, there's a huge change for a singer. If you're used to playing electric, and I know that your acoustic stuff is a whole different ball game. There's no distortion or that right behind.
Yeah, of course.
You've got to really be on the ball.
Yeah, you're very naked with that, and you've nothing to hide behind. So that was a big thing for me as well. I mean, when I first started doing the solo acoustic stuff, I didn't really have a clue what to do, and because I always had the wall of Marshalls and like you said, the electric guitars. And I actually went out and followed an Irish folk singer called Kieran Goss, who I became friendly with, and I went round Ireland watching him do like 10 or 12 gigs and just learning how he sang, played guitar, interacted with the audience, one-man acoustic thing. And again, just, learned from that, and adapted that into my own sort of ritual.
That's why I was talking to Ginger from the Wild Harps not too long ago, and he was saying he absolutely hates doing acoustic stuff. But
does he really?
Yeah. But I seen him playing. I went and seen him play at the garage in Sucky Hall. And it sounded absolutely brilliant. But I had to be I tried to sum up your entire career because, as I said, Wikipedia was full of things, right? So, do you know how many releases that you've had since the start? If you had to have a guess.
20, must be 25 at least.
I've got 30 releases since
really?
99, which is impressive. Obviously, you've got New Model Army. I know you started out there. The Almighty, Dick. You've got Circus Diablo, Thin Lizzy, Black Star Riders, The Fighting Heart. Are you currently back with? Is it the Almighty still? I know you have done a couple of wee bits and pieces. Are you working on new material just now?
We're thinking about it. I don't know. We don't know yet. We're in the studio in February there, and we recorded something that we're going to release very soon.
Was that the original lineup?
The original lineup, and it sounds phenomenal. And it's not a new song, so there's a clue. It's one track.
How are all the other guys doing? Are they doing okay?
Oh, they're all brilliant. Everybody's great. Yeah, thank you. Really, really good. So it was original lineup. So we're thinking about it. Obviously, we've got the St Andrew's Day show in the Barrowlands, which is turning into like a thing now every St Andrew's Day. It'll be the third time we've done it this year. We've got 2 shows either side of that as well, Nottingham and Portsmouth. And then we're headlining Stone Dead Festival in August. Right. So we're enjoying it. We're taking it very slowly, and we're adding a little bit as we go. The vibe's good. We're getting on great. We're playing great. It's great to have the 4 original guys, obviously, out there doing it. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, we're not going to record anything new. Because, never say never. But you never know. You never know.
Well, here, before we end things, I'm going to ask you some fun questions, right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Now, it might put one of the other members of the Almighty in a bad light here, right? So, imagine you've got a dead body in the boot of your car. You need to help disposing of that body, no questions asked. Which member are you calling to help you and why?
Stumpy. Because he's a fucking maniac.
Fair enough.
And he's fearless. And listen, if there's anybody you want your back in the trenches or anything like that, it's Stump, He's a good man to have on your side and a bad man not to have on your side.
We don't need to incriminate him anymore. So a couple other questions then. Imagine you could go back in time anywhere in the world, big gig, small gig, I'll let you decide. What's the one concert that you wish that you could have attended?
Wow, that's a great question. There's so many, you'd love to have gone right back and seen the Beatles and the Stones in the early 60s. That would have been something else. I'd have liked to seen the Who live at Leeds.
Yep.
Back in the day, I think that would have been, phenomenal.
Yeah. Similar question then. If you could go back in time as a spectator and go to one of your own gigs, is there any particular gig that stands out that would be quite cool to actually stand there and watch yourself perform?
I think the first time we sold out the Barrowlands, I think that was a momentous occasion, and it would have been lovely to be on the other side of that in the crowd.
The Barras is just such a cool venue.
Yeah. There's no place like it. There's just no place like it in the world. It just has a special vibe, and the walls just breathe rock and roll. You know what I mean? The minute you're in that building, the butterflies start, and I love playing there. I absolutely love playing there.
Yeah. Right. Imagine that, as you know, lots of great songs, thousands of great songs have been written and recorded across the years. What's the one song that you wish you could have sat in the recording studio to witness it being recorded?
Ace of Spades by Motorhead.
Pretty cool. That's fine.
Yeah.
What comes to mind? Favourite album cover?
Oh, man. Wow.
It's one of those things that some people, it's almost like it's something that's getting lost through time.
I'm going to go for Black Rose because I like Jim Fitzpatrick's artwork a lot.
Cool. In your opinion, does the perfect album exist start to finish?
No. I think that's the beauty of music. I think if you perfect it, it's game over. I think that's the thing you're always doing, is always trying to better what you did before, and the little flaws make it what it is. I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect album. I don't think it exists, and I'm glad it doesn't exist. Does that make sense?
That's fine. Is there another instrument that you wish that you could play?
I wish I'd gone to piano lessons that my mum tried to force me to go to, and I went to about 3 and told her I wasn't going back. I really regret that. I wish I'd stuck at it.
Yeah. And then last question for you, Ricky. Mount Rushmore. I know the answer could change every day, but for today, who is the 4 bands or musicians for yourself that are perfection?
Well, Phil Lynott. I'd have Steve Jones on there. Drummer wise, tricky one. Probably got to be Keith Moon, and we'll have another guitar player up there. Let me think about it. Did I say Steve Jones? I said Steve Jones already, didn't I? We'll go for James Hetfield.
Right, cool. Ginger said himself.
Of course he did.
Yeah, Ricky, I just...
Except when he's playing acoustic guitar, right?
That's it. I forgot to show you this. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, I remember it well.
There you go. 2009.
Yeah.
There you go. So that I thought it must have been a few years ago, and I'm like, Christ, that was 2009 already.
That was a long tour, man. We were out for almost 2 months and that. The guys very kindly took me out, and I rode the bus with them, and we had a great laugh, as you can imagine. It was really good.
But Ricky, thank you so much for...
pleasure, Ian. Absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Time out your day. Next time you're on tour, give me a wee shout. I'm going to come along, give you a wave.
You got it, my man. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Take care, buddy. Cheers, Ian.